Good morning.
It is a joy to be here with all of you. Hello to our Trinity people on the screen today. Everybody, please say thank you, Roland.
Thank you, Roland.
We threw Roland a curveball today. This morning's sermon is going to be delivered by the bishop by a pre-recorded sermon that he gave to our annual conferences. I have edited that sermon down. It was initially 48 minutes. It is now a little over 25. So, there is a fine line between a long sermon and a hostage situation. I am well aware. He isn't here, so if you need to stand up, walk around, get a little extra coffee, please do. But I wanted you to get a taste of what our Episcopal leadership looks like and where his vision for what churches are capable of and how we as a church can embrace that. Also, Happy New Year!
You're right. Happy New Year.
I heard the woo from the fellow Methodist pastor back here. It is the first Sunday of my new appointment year at Trinity Methodist Church. Happy new Methodist year. This is the start of my 5th year amongst you, and it has been a fun ride, and I am honored and delighted to continue to be your pastor here again today. Thanks be to God for this opportunity to be in relationship and in ministry together with you. Hi to the Wilson family. It is good to see you, and now I would like to take a moment to take a deep breath to ground our feet where we are sitting or standing, to acknowledge that the place that we are located is a place with history. It is a place that is part of the legacy of the Duwamish, the Snoqualmish, the Coast Salish, and Stillaguamish peoples. A people who did not cede this land but had it taken from them. So as a community of faith, may we find ways to change and transform our relationship to this land so that all may prosper and thrive. And now I'd like to invite Matt Berry to come forward to share in our call to worship.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So all be the one and you be the all. For beloved community, near and far.
For the invitation to love and be loved.
For abundant opportunities to begin again. For spiritual practices that ground us.
For play that enlightens us.
For wisdom that invites us to expansive living.
We give thanks to the Holy One for these sustaining gifts. Let us worship God, our provider and friend.
And now join me in the opening prayer.
Spirit of Christ, in the midst of our worries, you meet us compassionately with a challenge to trust you, to love, to trust that this faith can hold us. Make us like trees firmly planted by streams of water, able to weather the difficulties of life while still bearing fruit that nourishes and sustains. Nurture our generosity and encourage us in the strength of being together. Amen.
If you would rise in body or spirit, turn to page 2082 in your black hymnal. I will be the leader, you will be the all, unless somebody else wants to be the leader. No volunteers? Smart crowd. All right, here we go. This
Today's scripture reading is from Luke verses 25 through 37. An expert on the law stood to put Jesus to the test and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit everlasting life?" Jesus answered, What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The expert in the law replied, "You must love the Most High God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbors as yourself." Jesus said, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you'll live." But the expert on the law, seeking self-justification, pressed Jesus further. "And just who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "There was a traveler going down from Jerusalem to Jericho who fell prey to robbers. The traveler was beaten, stripped naked, and left half dead. A priest happened to be doing down the same road. The priest saw the traveler lying beside the road, but passed on by the other side. Likewise, there was a Levite who came the same way. This one, too, saw the afflicted traveler and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, who was taking the same road, also came upon the traveler, and, filled with compassion, approached the traveler and dressed the wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then the Samaritan put the wounded person on a donkey, went straight to an inn, and there took care of the injured one. The next day, the Samaritan took out 2 silver pieces and gave them to the innkeeper with the request, look after this person, and if there is any further expense, I'll repay you on the way back. Which of these 3, in your opinion, was the neighbor to the traveler who fell in with the robbers?" The answer came, the one who showed compassion. Jesus replied, "Then go and do the same." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Children descend. I'm hurt? Oh no! Do you know how to help? Ouch! Do you know how to help? What do I need to do? Okay. That helps. Is there any help you can give Izzy and Ow!
You can.
What did she suggest?
It helps somebody up, says Izzy.
You can help somebody up. Okay. That's a good idea. Oh, I think it might be 2 hands.
Are you okay?
Oh.
Thank you. Okay. I made dream.
High five. So Jesus told a story about someone who was on the side of the road and who was in pain and hurt. Yeah, and it was a story about how people kept walking past, that they didn't stop to help. But there was someone unexpected, someone really kind that stopped and helped. Helped pick him up, helped bandage and find band-aids for his owies, helped carry him to a place where it was safe. So thank you very much for helping me get up. And thank you for listening to what Jesus says, that when we see somebody who's in trouble, let's do our best to help them. So high five to Maddie. High five to Rowan. High five? Nope. And high five to Izzy and Sophia. High five. High five. All right. Thank you very much for being what's called good Samaritans, being people who help when help is needed. Let's pray. Repeat after me. Dear God.
Dear God.
Thank you for helping me help. May I see where today
I can help today.
and every day.
And every day.
Amen.
All right, bye-bye.
If you take that same black window out, please turn to page 2237 as a burning 2237. You be the all, I will be the all, we'll all be the all.
That our bishop preached. He has preached a series of 4 sermons from across the various annual conferences from our greater Northwest area. This is the sermon that he gave to the Alaska conference, but they are all tied together. I actually highly recommend that if you need like a fun podcast listening moment, to go listen to these and to hear what we have in store. It's gonna be a little long. And the other thing you should know is that when we see cutscenes, he is a master of the 3-second to 5-second pause in the middle of his reflections. I have cut out a lot of those pauses for you all, so you might see some jumps and kind of like, what's missing? Most of what's missing is pauses. Okay, that gave you 4 minutes of your life back. So, here we go. It's not quite there yet. Share screen. Start broadcast. Can we move the microphone? We'll move the microphone.
A little bit about how to approach the sermonic moment for today. And I did something I don't regularly do. I asked some other people their opinion, and they offered it. They tend to offer it even when they're not asked, but this time I asked and landed in a place where my heart is settled. And so what you get today is really a continuation of the sermon from the installation. But it's all around this theme that we've been sharing with you for a few months now of go and do likewise based on the gospel text from Luke 10. Some of you are already ahead of the game, and you know that when I first preached on this a few weeks ago, we talked about ways that we could live this out by praying with our feet, healing with our words, and loving with our resources. And then I talked to you about this thing called a mile, the M-I-L-E. You remember this? This is one of the sermons you're going to have to remember. It's never going away. It's just going to keep coming back. It's like Gremlins, or, you know, the Gremlins were the ones that just kept coming back, right? Yeah, so it's like that. This sermon and this idea, this theme is just going to continue to come back over and over again. This is not the thing to forget. And I know by saying that, you've immediately forgotten it. So let me do it the Jesus way. Remember this. You know, forget it. Forget it. Forget everything that I say. Tell no one. Tell no one. It's a secret. You have to hold it to yourself. You can't repeat anything that I say to anyone, not even your best of best friends. You can't tell a single soul. If your mother tries to bribe it out of you, say, no, Ma, I was told I can't do it. Not even for you. All right? Now you're all confused. Like, which friend do I start with? The mile, the M-I-L-E, is ministry that matters. It's about itineration and location. The clergy people will know what that is. We're talking about lay ministry enhancement and then elimination of racism. That's the M-I-L-E. And my hope is that we will advance our work to have impact in our area. And when I say in our area, I don't just mean the addresses where we have buildings or where we have a cross and a flame stamped on something. I mean the area, all of it. Because if our ministries within our locations don't matter outside those locations, do they really matter? Okay, think about that. All right. But I believe firmly in my heart that our cultural and theological imperatives call for us to narrow our focus to increase our impact. That as we work and as we worship and serve together, that God will speak to us and through us, and we will know where, we'll know why, and how we must go forward in our area as an area working together. And so in each installment of this long, never-ending, ever-returning sermon that you will get so accustomed to, we'll focus on a character and characteristics that help us discern and decide how we will go and do likewise for this M-I-L-E ahead. And then I like to go in and think about the characters. Now you can look around this room, you can even look around your home or your office or wherever you're watching this online and probably see some characters too. However, we want to focus on the characters in the text. And I suppose as we think about who the characters are, we of course know that there's Jesus and the lawyer or the legal expert. But in the parable, in the story that Jesus tells, the people are the man who was beaten up by robbers, which means there were some robbers. There was the priest, there was the Levite, there was the Samaritan who came upon the man who had been beaten by the robbers, and we also have the innkeeper who is mentioned. And oftentimes when we read scriptural text, we put ourselves in the story somewhere. We assume the role or the perspective of one or more of those characters. So as you have heard this text today and you start to think about it, which character are you? And I suppose it may depend on the day or the situation at hand. as to who you might choose. It also may depend on whether you're looking in a mirror or if you're looking out a window. See, a mirror gives us a reflection of ourselves. We get to see a version of ourselves when we peer into a mirror. Remember the mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest? Remember that? But it gives us a reflection of ourselves, and we can see ourselves up closely if we choose to. Because we decide how close we are to the mirror, right? And depending on what it is we're trying to accomplish while we're in that mirror, that'll dictate how close we get. If we're trying to get, our cool new outfit, we might step back so we can see this thing from head to toe. And we can step back and look and say, I am sharper than a thumbtack. Yes! And you want to see all that glory, right? But sometimes you might have something on your face, or you want to make sure this is lined right, or that you've drawn your eyebrows back on even or something. So you get close. I grew up in a house full of women, y'all. Come on. So you get a little closer to make sure you're doing that right? I mean, so the mirror gives us a little something that we can work with. We can critique and fix what's there if we choose to do so. And we can see ourselves in full view, but it's in reverse angle. And only in relation to what's behind us. We really can't see anything except ourselves and what's behind us when we're looking in a mirror. And sometimes what's back there calls to us and challenges our ability and capacity to move forward or to look at or to see things differently. We're stuck on what's right there. And mirrors have a way of bringing us a view that is familiar, but it's not always welcomed. Sometimes we don't like what we see when we look in the mirror. Sometimes we don't understand what we see when we look in the mirror. But when we're looking into a mirror, it also blocks what's out in front of us. And I think the lawyer that approaches Jesus was looking in the mirror. He could only see himself and his way of understanding the world and the ways of God in that moment. And Jesus invites him to step away from the mirror and to look out of a window. He wanted the lawyer to see himself in relation to what was happening beyond himself. Oh, so y'all want me to preach this whole sermon by myself? Jesus wanted him to grasp the possibility that what was behind him may have served him well for a season, but this was the time for him to look ahead, to look at what was going on around him, to look at the ways he was not being a good neighbor because he limited his understanding of who could be his neighbor. I can imagine that some of the rhetoric that we hear in some neighborhoods about their disdain for housing the houseless or providing food and clothing to those living on the streets is mirror talk. I mean, when your property value is of greater importance than the dignity of another human being and whether or not they have shelter, that's mirror talk. Oh, we ready now? I love it. I mean, when the best you can offer is that the church should help people in need, but only in ways that the homeowners in the area can support it, that's mirror talk. I can imagine that is the same kind of conversation that went on when there was a call to desegregate schools and other facilities. That we should take it slow. That people aren't ready for so much change so quickly. They might not like it here. They should just wait for change. That's mirror talk. Women can't be pastors. The church can't ordain queer people. Kids don't have opinions. We can't have drums in the sanctuary. Worship can only happen on Sunday mornings and inside a building that has a steeple and a cross on top of it. Communion can only happen once a month. Everybody has the same opportunities to succeed. They just have to try. My parents came through Ellis Island. You know I'm making this part up. My parents came through Ellis Island. Or arrived with nothing and we made it. Or that happened so long ago, they ought to be over it by now. If children see a person in drag, that'll make them gay. Well, here you go. If this isn't the best drag I've ever seen, I don't know what is. Sorry, children. I did it. Or people in Alaska deciding to have multi-adult family harms the meaning of marriage for people in Florida. Or any same-sex couple deciding to get married anywhere in the world impacts some no-sex marriage somewhere else in the world. If you put housing for those working low-wage jobs and seasonal jobs here, won't that drive out potential investments or investors? Or in the mouth of the lawyer in conversation with Jesus, who is my neighbor? That's all mirror talk. Jesus challenges the lawyer to move beyond mirror talk and to do some window work. And Jesus tells the story of this man who was on this dangerous road, was overcome by robbers, and two individuals, two able-bodied, well-meaning, purposeful individuals, we'll say, passed him up and went on about their business. But the one person that everybody knows is up to no good and is no good stopped to do good. And Jesus ends the story with what I believe is window work. When he asked which one of these three was a neighbor to the man who encountered thieves, and the legal expert responded with a window work response. He said, the one who demonstrated mercy toward him. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. Better yet, go and do window work. So we can all stop saying we don't do windows. Your window work in your community may be different from the window work in my community or in other churches. And it may not fit neatly into the categories outlined by the annual conference or even by the area. So after spending some months with you now, moving around in your midst, participating in meet and greet sessions, listening sessions, reviewing much of the work that you've been engaged in over the past few years, trying to hear the cries of your hearts, and seeing the need for direction, focus, and vision, I offer a pathway for us to move toward that by naming areas where we can have great impact, where we can experience unity, and where we can listen for God as we do our window work. So today we deal with the M of the MILE. And the M is about ministry that matters. Anybody want to talk about ministry that matters? Amen. If the world needs anything right now, it's ministry that matters. Not just ministry that stirs the hearts and minds of the few folk we can gather at some pews on Sunday mornings, but ministry that truly impacts the lives of those far beyond the spaces where we gather to worship. And as we engaged over these few months of listening and trying to figure out how do we start to make sense out of all that's before us, you've heard me say that in some of the reflection that came as we talked about the areas of ministry where you all believed we could have the greatest impact if we were to work together and focus, landed in two big headings, and that was around housing and health. And I want to go deeper into those today because I want us to get an understanding of what we can do, understanding of the window work that we can continue to do or start to do in our churches and in our communities. And as we talk about housing, this is around issues of affordability, access, and security. And some of you are saying he already told us that when he preached about this in Juneau. Yes, he did. And he's going to tell you again when he preaches on it again in Meridian and in Tacoma and from wherever the closing session is happening, that he's going to keep doing that because he wants you to remember it and keep it to yourself. Don't breathe a word of it to anyone. This is a secret. But as we talk about housing, we're talking about affordability, access, and security. Repurposing underutilized assets, partnering with anybody who shares our values, who's willing to partner with us. Because we have a lot of underutilized land. We have buildings that will never be filled with our people, our programs, and our effort alone. We have parking lots and green space reserved for use by a few when many could benefit from our window work. Housing crisis exists in most communities in the United States of America, including Alaska. For your congregation, housing may not be the answer. It may not be the calling that stirs you to action, or you may not have any of this underutilized building or underutilized land. You may be making full use of everything you have. And by full use, I don't mean storing Christmas trees and the felt ponies from the Sunday school and all this stuff that you used 45 years ago and you're just holding it just in case the children come back. You'll be ready to launch that thriving children's ministry at the drop of a dime. I don't mean that. I know I'm meddling. But do you have city, state, or other government leaders associated with your congregation? I mean, what can you do to help those who do see the need and are willing to address it, even if you are not? What advocacy can you offer to move public policy agendas that no longer criminalize mental illness or poverty? What can your real and human capital do to alleviate the suffering of those who are unhoused or on the verge of losing the housing they have? Because I have it on good authority that most of us are only at best about 2 bad decisions away from living on the streets. And they may not even be bad decisions. They may just be decisions. But that's how vulnerable most of us are. But that's window work. You may not be ready to develop housing on your property or use your facility as a cold weather shelter, participate with Family Promise or ministries like that, or repurpose your entire property for another's use. But what will you do? Now's the time for us to move past what can we do to what will we do. Can we do is mirror talk. Will we do is window work. Amen? So what window work will you do around housing? Moving on to health. As we talk about health, this is still good stuff. We're talking about preparedness, prevention, and equity. And as I've heard many of you share where you believe we can have great impact and where there is great need, various aspects of health kept coming up. Mental health services and advocacy, physical well-being of clergy and laity on the heels of pandemic. How do we be well and do good, clean that up for me later, Lisa, while experiencing degrees of exhaustion and burnout? What about public health and how to care for one another when so much in our context seeks to tear us apart and divide us from one another? You can think about disaster preparedness and disaster response along with climate care. We can think about economy and education for our emerging realities. I mean, college debt is a burden when the best job prospect you can consider is between the car rental company or the cell phone kiosk, if there are openings in those places. And those are jobs that someone must do, but they do not require a college degree and debt to do them. Our present economy does not work for us. And I mean the economy of our nation and of our church. Does not work for us. You're listening now, I can tell. Because they are dependent on the rich getting richer and the poor staying poor. We see it in salary scales, promotional structures, retirement investments, home ownership versus parsonage use, parsonage standards, who's afforded full-time appointments and who is not, and the list goes on and on. And sometimes it's not the system or the conference doing something sinister, but it's the centuries of systemic oppression, passive neglect, and scarcity mindset that establishes the order of things. Yet we have policies and practices that do little to challenge or dismantle the policy structures and behaviors that perpetuate an inequitable economy that will never be any better than we demand for it to be. Our sense of our economy has us using single-use and non-degradable products to get by. I mean, what if we took one action step to address climate care in every one of our ministry settings? Just one. What if we made a public declaration that the United Methodists of the greater Northwest area commits ourselves to lessen our carbon footprint in at least 3 ways over the next 3 years? What if we commit ourselves to repurposing unused classrooms and office space to be used by community-based mental health professionals at a nominal cost, if it's at a cost at all? What if we accepted the reality that our preschool probably, maybe, possibly, is never going to grow to the point of needing an entire wing of the building? And instead, we partner with our ecumenical and nonprofit leaders to open low and no-cost clinics for those who struggle to get across town to receive basic care. What if we worked directly with tech professionals to design our Wi-Fi systems so that our neighbors could have Wi-Fi access when they need it? Oh, y'all got quiet on that one. And I saw the strangest thing yesterday when we parked the car in front of our hotel. This is not on the script, so I have to come over here. This means I'm off script when I come over here. But when actually it was before we got to the hotel, I saw a strange thing. We're driving along, Rondelay was driving, and we're riding along, and then this indicator comes on the dash that says, hood ajar. Which is not something you want to pop on while you're driving down the highway. I don't care what highway it is. And so we pull off and I go and there's this plug, looked like an extension cord, was hanging. You've seen these. I don't have that on my car. So it's sticking out. I'm trying to, why is this here, and so I open the hood, I just cram it back under there, close the hood. It's I guess they know where this is supposed to go. And so we drive, and then we get to the hotel, and we park, and I look, and there's just a little outlet, right there in front of the car. And suddenly I figured out this extension cord is supposed to go in that thing. Wow. Welcome to Fairbanks. But it took me back to a thought that I had back several months ago and was thinking about climate care and what can the church do. And I thought about the fact that we have United Methodist Church. I just want to think about the United Methodists right now, but we have them stretched all the way across our area. We have them stretched all the way across the country. We have churches in places where people don't even live anymore, but we hold on to a church, but the church is going to be there, right? But we have churches that stretch all the way. And so I'm thinking about, we're wanting to move away from fossil fuels but we don't have the infrastructure in place to really support electric vehicles, and we don't have charging stations all over. What if the United Methodist Church became synonymous with, that's a place I can charge my car? It's just a thought. I figure if we could put outlets all the way, around the Staybridge Hotel or whatever that is, it Staybridge wherever we are. If we can put outlets all the way around the parking lot at a hotel, we could figure out how to do charging stations around the parking lots of our churches so that our neighbors have a place to help us help the climate. This area of health is broad, and it has a lot of options for all of us to do more mirror talk or some significant window work. In Jesus' story, the Samaritan's window work involved him taking the man who had been beaten to a secure location and ensured he had what he needed to be taken care of. He identified a need and involved himself in the solution. See, identifying a need, that's often mirror talk. Involving yourself in the solution, window work. The legal expert heard the story, responded to Jesus' question, but did he go back to mirror talk, or did he move out into window work? We don't know. But when you decide to do window work, you'll still need to take a glance in the mirror from time to time. And while you're in the mirror, ask yourself the question the legal expert asked. While you're in that mirror, ask yourself the question the legal expert presented to Jesus. Who is my neighbor? And I pray that you hear Jesus say, go and do window work. Amen? Amen. Oh, there's one more sentence. When we do window work, we get a better sense of who we see in the mirror. Mic has been dropped.
Thank you all for listening to that and being a part of that sermon. As you can see, many of the things that he was mentioning and talking about priorities are heart questions and hard questions that Trinity has been asking. So as we look forward to our next couple of years where we're focusing on ministry that matters to each other and to our community, as we're investing in what next steps we get to take together, this is an important conversation to be able to keep in mind that is coming not from our grassroots here on the ground in Crown Hill and adjacent to Ballard, but also that's coming from our Episcopal leadership. So I wanted you to be informed and maybe just a smidgen excited about what was being discussed and shared with at annual conference. And now, Todd, I'd like to invite you to come and share in a musical offering with us today. offering today, I wanted to check in and see what you all thought of Niles a few weeks ago, the cellist. Oh, I am so glad that you got to experience him and his incredible talent. It was really fun working in my office that week because he would be practicing. I want to say thank you to Terry and Todd, where I texted them and I said, there is this opportunity for us to share space that we aren't using with a Broadway caliber cellist. Is that okay? And the response was, let's figure it out. That is window work, right? To say, here is our space and how we're going to be able to share this. And what a way to have a thank you come to us. So thank you for your hospitality in that one small way. I was really sad I missed it, missed being with you all, but I'm glad that you got to feel the fruits of what hospitality can feel like. And that is a consistent and eager response of Trinity to say, let's figure out how we'll make it work. So thanks be to God for that ministry that we do in this community, and may we find ways to continue to look and see and expand those kinds of connections. Matt, will you please come forward to help us meditate on that with our prayer of dedication?
Please join me in the prayer of dedication. We pledge, O God, to discover how much is enough for us to be truly fulfilled, neither rich nor poor, and to consume only that. We pledge, O God, to be part of the discovery of how much will be enough for everyone, not only to survive, but to thrive, and to find ways for all to have access to that. We offer our lives to you, so we may learn to live like Jesus, healing our lives and the life of the world. Amen.
Beloved, what are the prayers that you bring with you this morning? What are your joys? What are your concerns? What are your hopes? And what are your fears? Jerry.
Well, my grandson, Emily, graduated from Whitman.
Hooray!
And he will be going to, I always forget the name. It's down at the Seattle Center School.
Okay. For graduations and for new adventures, what is the phrase? I've not been on vacation too long. God of love and God of light. Hear our prayer.
Vacation must have been really good.
Vacation was great. Gordon.
So it's a slightly long one. So prayer of celebration, the Pride Parade went off very well. We had about 50 people marching. There were a ton of people at first offering communion and general hospitality. Very well met by the participants watching the march. And that, apropos to what the bishop just said, representation matters. That when I'm a straight white guy talking to people at the Pride Fest, to young queer women saying that I go to a church with a married lesbian pastor, I'm a married gay leader of our music program, and you could see that they were like, I can go there. And we sing, make the circle wide, and we're making the circle wide. So, thank you all.
Thanks be to God for the Festival of Pride, and thanks be to God for Trinity being a church that is open and affirming, not just in word, but in deed. God of love and God of light.
Hear our prayer.
Oh, and for the shared ministry I get to do with Todd. High five. Okay. God of love and God of light.
Hear our prayer.
In light of that, there have been stories. Pastors collect stories. It's one of the joys that we have. Not all of the stories are happy stories. And I've been collecting stories of some of our queer youth who have been experiencing violence in this community and in this country. So as we celebrate Pride, may we also name that our work is not yet done. That we name that over 500 bills were introduced in state legislatures to curtail LGBTQ freedoms, medical care, and other necessary life-affirming and giving resources. I grew up in Western Washington, so you think, oh, it would have been all puppies and kittens in terms of LGBTQ acceptance. Mary's like, nah. But I had friends who were regularly beaten, that were the people on the side of the road, and who experienced violence. And for people like me who were figuring it out, who self-truncated, limited our self-expressions, and caused internal harm, right? So may we not just celebrate that community in June, may we continue to be affirming of people's lives, may we continue to denounce violence, and may we continue to celebrate the inherent belovedness of everyone in our Seattle community and around the country and world. God of love and God of light.
Hear our prayer.
Prayer in line with the Supreme Court ruling that sets us back towards moving towards equity in the country. And just gotta figure out other ways to do it.
My beloved, who works at a university, is saying a prayer for the Supreme Court decisions that set us back. And may we find ways to achieve equity outside of these restrictions. God of love and God of light. I lift up a prayer for a friend who was really excited about the student debt forgiveness meant that she'd be able to have a house, and her exhaustion and heartache that came this week. God of love and God of light. I also want to say thank you to God for my best friend Heather, who is getting to foster 5 kittens right now. And for all of those who foster puppies and kittens, who extend their care to the 4-legged beloved among us, God of love and God of light.
For joy, and I guess traveling mercies in some ways. Our family's going to family camp this week, and back after we went 2 years ago, weren't able to go last summer, and this year the family more. So the lessons we go off on Wednesday through Saturday at Camp Indianola.
Thanks be to God for family camp and the Stanton nurses being able to go. God of love and God of light. No eye contact from the Walsons. Scanning. All right. For all of these prayers that we have spoken out loud, for the prayers that we continue to hold within us that are too precious, too private, or too exciting to name, God of love and God of light. Hear our prayer. And let us continue to pray using the words that are either in the bulletin or come most readily to you, saying the Lord's Prayer. Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and wisdom, and the glory forever. Amen. It says communion here. I had elected not to do communion because it's a holiday weekend, and I want that to be grace available to everyone, and because I had a sneaking suspicion before I left I would forget the elements. I apparently forgot to take it out of the bulletin. So we are not going to do communion this week. We will celebrate that grace and opportunity next week. To move on to announcements, the July Trinity Gathering, Pastor Mary and I kept on having these big, grand, exciting plans, like Everett Aqua Sox game, and like going and doing fun things. And then I just realized we just need it to be like scaled to a reasonable, normal, doable size. So for our first attempt at a July Trinity Gathering, we are going to go to Carkeek Park at 10 a.m. And we're just going to go enjoy the trains, enjoy some bubbles, enjoy some snacks. I am planning on bringing ice cream bars so you can enjoy ice cream at 10 because it's summer and why not? and we'll just be able to enjoy each other's company. Sound good? Sounds good. Our Bible studies are restarting this week. I will see our Thursday crowd at 2. Are there any other announcements that might need to be shared that the community wishes to bring to one another? Any comments about the bishop's sermon that you would like to address right here and right now as a holy community?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. 2:30? 2:30. Thursdays at 2:30. All right. Then please stand in body or spirit. Pastor Mary, please come here close to the microphone. And you can either hold hands or indicate that you don't wish to hold hands like this as we sing Peace Be With You. Together from that mirror work and towards the window, looking into the community and into the work ahead of us. Go in peace. You're sent in Jesus' name to love God and serve your neighbor. Amen.
Amen.